Welcome to Power Coat Music. In this presentation, we're going to talk about mixing down audio and the pros and cons of mixing dry tracks versus wet tracks in your home recording studio. But first, I want to quickly ask you to please check out my YouTube homepage to view all of my videos carefully organized by subject. Also, if you find that you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a great deal. And now, back to the presentation. A dry signal or track is an unprocessed original sound with no effects applied. For example, a vocal track with no reverb, delay, or other effects added would be considered dry. Dry signals are often recorded to preserve the raw sound for later processing, ensuring maximum flexibility during mixing. A wet signal, however, or track, has effects applied to it, such as reverb, delay, compression, or modulation. Modulation includes effects like chorus and flanging. For example, a guitar track with a lush reverb or delay applied would be considered wet. Wet signals, when created skillfully, can add depth, space, or a specific character to a mix, which is what we are all looking for. Let's discuss the pros and cons of mixing down dry signals or tracks. Let's start with the pros. Dry tracks allow for flexibility in post-production. You can tailor the sound to fit the specific needs of your project without being constrained by pre-applied effects. Now, it's easier to experiment with different effects, dynamics, and tonal balances. Dry tracks can also set the stage for better collaboration. Other engineers, producers, or collaborators can apply their preferred processing without needing to undo existing effects. This is common for professional workflows where multiple people are involved in the production process. Dry tracks offer transparency. Now, this gives a true representation of the recorded performance, highlighting the quality of the source material and the mic placement. Dry tracks reduce the risk of overprocessing. Now, it prevents committing to effects that might not, fit the final context of the song or production. Dry tracks offer control over reverb, room ambiance. This allows you to craft the ambiance ambiance in the mix, rather than being stuck with a baked-in room tone or reverb. Now let's move on to the cons. Cons start with dry tracks can have a lack of finished sound. A dry track can feel unpolished and uninspiring, making it harder to gauge the final potential of the track. Next is dry tracks can be time consuming. Well, this is true. Applying effects and processing from scratch takes more time than working with a pre-mixed recording. It can anyway. Dry tracks may highlight flaws. Without effects to mask imperfections, dry tracks can expose issues like room noise, tuning problems, or performance inconsistencies. Dry tracks can be overwhelming for inexperienced mixers. Beginners may struggle to decide which effects and settings to apply without a starting point, that is, or a reference. Dry tracks can set the stage for potential miscommunication. If sharing a mix with dry tracks with clients or collaborators, they might not understand that the lack of effects is intentional, which can lead to confusion. Let's discuss the pros and cons of mixing down wet signals or tracks, and we'll begin with the pros. Wet tracks can invoke atmosphere and depth. They can add a sense of space and dimension, making the audio feel more immersive and alive. They can create natural ambiance, as if the sound is being played in a real-world environment. Wet tracks can invoke emotion and mood. They can enhance the emotional impact of music, making it feel dreamy, ethereal, or larger than life. They can be great for genres like ambiance, shoegaze, electronic, or cinematic music. Wet tracks can blend elements. They can smooth out a mix, helping instruments and vocals blend together cohesively. They're also useful for filling gaps or making sparse arrangements feel fuller. Wet tracks can offer creative flexibility. They can enable unique artistic sound design choices, giving a track character and identity. They can also be used to mask imperfections in a dry recording for things like harshness or sibilance. Wet tracks also support genre-specific requirements. They can be essential for styles like ambient, dream pop, or cinematic scoring, where effects are a core part of the aesthetic. Now, let's check out the cons. Wet tracks contribute to loss of clarity in a mix. Excessive use of effects can muddy the mix, making individual tracks less defined. Overdone wet tracks may blur critical details like vocals or lead instruments. Wet tracks can contribute to phase issues. Things like heavy reverb or delay can introduce phase cancellation, affecting how the track sounds in mono or specific playback systems. Wet tracks can contribute to overpowering effects. Effects can dominate the mix, detracting from the song's main elements and the overall message. They can lead to the risk of the mix sounding washed out or, in some cases, unfocused. Wet tracks can lead to compatibility challenges. They may not transfer well in the mix across the different playback systems, especially in small speakers or mono setups. Wet tracks may comprise, or should I say compromise, dynamic range and punch, which may be essential in genres like rock or electronic dance music. Wet tracks also offer less versatility. Wet tracks in a mix may limit future remixing or post-processing options compared to a dry mix with separate effects layers. And this is always important to me when I, look at how I'm going to architect my mix. Now let's talk about when to use wet tracks in a mix. It may be a good idea to use wet tracks when creating a specific vibe or ambiance, or should I say when creating specific vibe or ambiance is a priority. Wet tracks may work well for mixes where natural reverberation like orchestral or choral music is key. Wet tracks may work well if blending sound is more important than maintaining individual clarity. And finally, let's discuss using wet and dry tracks together in a mix along with some key considerations. Producers and recording engineers often use a blend of dry and wet signals to achieve the desired sound. One approach is parallel processing. Now, parallel processing involves keeping the original dry signal and mixing it with the wet signal. For instance, sending a dry vocal track to a reverb or delay bus and blending the two. Another approach is using a dry-wet knob. Many digital audio workstation software plugins have a dry-wet control to let you balance the dry signal and the wet one. Some key considerations include: number one, balance. Too much wetness can make a mix sound muddy, while too much dryness can make it feel lifeless or flat. Number two, context. Dry tracks in a mix work well for clarity and upfront sounds for podcasts, pop, and things like pop vocals. Wet tracks and mixes are ideal for atmospheric and depth for genres like ambient or, again, cinematic music. Number three, automation. Some mixers automate the wet-dry balance to add dynamic changes throughout a track. For instance, making a vocal drier during verses and wetter during choruses for contrast. Well, that's a wrap. If you like this video, please give it the thumbs up and click the subscribe button to join our group. We have new videos coming out every 7 to 14 days. And please leave a comment in the comments section about this presentation and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Spotify. While you're here, listen to some of the music and check out the playlist because they're designed just for you. Thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you soon.